You know that feeling, right? You're scrolling through social media, maybe just unwinding, and bam, this pastel-colored reel pops up.
Yeah, I know the ones.
And there's this, like, smiling expert, often looking really sincere, gazing right at you, asking, do you ever feel like you need to script every conversation? Hmm, that might be your OCD. Huh. Or maybe.
Maybe it's your quirky, undiagnosed autism. Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And then almost always comes the soft pitch for a course, self-paced journey into navigating neurodivergence.
It's become such a specific online genre, hasn't it? And it's spreading really rapidly.
Absolutely. Our sources are clear. This isn't just a one-off video. It's a whole thing, especially, it seems, among people who are maybe newly diagnosed or self-diagnosed, and they're building these personal brands around it.
And that's where it gets, well, tricky, because the sources we looked at point out something really concerning. While maybe some are well-meaning, they often fundamentally misunderstand what's actually going on.
How so?
Well, they might confuse trauma responses with a specific language processing style, or they label that scripting thing you mentioned as like a compulsion, or mistake really rich metaphorical language for just, quirky masking.
Okay, right. And this is where our sources really land on something huge. They suggest that underneath a lot of this confusion, there's a different explanation. Much of what's getting mislabeled, it's actually something called Gestalt language processing.
Precisely. GLP.
So for this deep dive, that's our mission. We're going to unpack what Gestalt language processing, GLP, really is. We'll dig into why getting it wrong matters so much for, well, how people communicate, how they see themselves.
And hopefully show the clarity that understanding it can bring.
Exactly. We've pulled the key insights from our sources to hopefully help you get really informed on this.
And that shift, that understanding, it's critical. Because when GLP gets mistaken for something else, it doesn't just muddy the waters. It can actively mislead people trying to figure themselves out.
And kind of miseducates everyone else about how diverse neurodivergent minds actually are.
Right.
So, okay, keeping that distinction in mind, let's dive into what our sources call the coaching carousel. This, cycle where misdiagnosis seems to always come with a course recommendation.
Or a workbook, yeah. There's a definite pattern. You see the personal story, then this kind of confident misattribution.
Sprinkled with neurodivergent buzzwords.
Exactly. And then the invite to, join the community, buy the course.
So let's break down some common examples. One you already mentioned, scripting conversations in advance, often labeled as OCD, right? That need to get it perfect.
Yeah, that's a big one online. But the research is pretty clear. For many, that's actually GLP in action.
So, wait. If it's not obsession, what is it? Are they assembling? Is that the idea?
Kind of. Our sources describe it as more intuitive. Language for a GLP arrives in these meaning-filled chunks, whole gestalts, not word by word. So the script isn't about controlling every detail like an OCD. It's about ensuring the whole emotional meaning, the coherence, actually lands properly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, what about repeating quotes? Lines from movies or TV shows. That's often framed as, a trauma response.
Yeah.
Avoiding vulnerability.
It is often framed that way, but again, our sources point to this as classic stage 1 echolalia and GLP development, and this is a really crucial shift in understanding.
How so? It's not avoidance then?
No, not at all. It is communication. Deeply meaningful communication.
Wow. So what's happening there?
The person is using language. They've stored these whole gestalts, quote and all, to communicate emotion, a memory, a specific tone, even timing. Sometimes a line from a cartoon just holds more truth, more accuracy for that feeling.
Than anything they could build from scratch.
Exactly. As one source put it, that is how I speak for myself. Through resonance, through retrieval, through meaning that arrives whole.
That's actually really beautiful. It totally reframes it.
It does. And this misunderstanding, it extends further, overanalyzing every interaction.
Oh, yeah. I think it's called RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria, a lot.
Yeah.
Or even an addiction to closure.
Right. But look at it through a GLP lens. What if it's the processor trying to complete an unfinished gestalt, a communication loop that feels broken?
Like being cut off mid-sentence.
But in a language only they fully grasp. Yeah. Communication for them is deeply emotional, narrative, relational. An unresolved ending isn't just awkward. It can feel fundamentally incomplete, unfinished. It needs that closure, but it's a gestalt kind of closure.
Okay. And then there's the metaphor thing. People who can't explain how they feel unless it's in metaphor. often just called highly sensitive or,
Neurospicy.
yeah, or leaning into their mystic side or something.
But what's really insightful from the sources is that for many GLPs, metaphor is their most direct emotional language. Feeling and image aren't separate.
So they reach for metaphor because it's efficient,
Yeah.
honest.
The most honest, efficient, and exact way they have to convey what's happening inside. It's not whimsy, it's fluency. It's precision.
Fluency. I like that. Okay, last one on this carousel.
Yeah.
Talking in loops, repeating the same story, often chalked up to executive dysfunction, right? Like,
Yeah.
you just need a better planner.
Yeah, get a notion board.
Yeah.
But no, our sources say that's often Gestalt repair.
Gestalt repair.
Yeah, it's the mind working through meaning until it clicks, until it lands. They loop not because their memory's faulty, but because something vital in that meaning chunk didn't finish loading, essentially.
And a planner isn't going to fix that.
Not a chance. It's a deep cognitive process, not a scheduling issue.
So let's be really clear here. We're not dismissing OCD or trauma, RSD, executive dysfunction. Those are absolute real conditions.
Absolutely. They need proper diagnosis, proper support.
But what the source material really highlights is how this online coaching stuff often takes symptoms, misattributes them, slaps on a trendy neurodivergent label, and sells it back as insight.
Misattribution, dressed up as insight, as one source put it, using buzzwords for branding.
And it leads people down the wrong path, misunderstanding their own core communication style, maybe even missing out on support that would actually help.
Exactly. So if it's often not those other things for these communication patterns, what is Gestalt language processing?
Right. Because our sources are adamant. It's not just a vibe, it's not a trauma tick.
And definitely not something you can just break free from with, like, a bullet journal.
No. What's fascinating is that GLP is described as a valid, well-documented way some people develop and use language. Autistic people, yes, but others too.
And the simplest way to grasp it is that GLPs learn language in chunks, whole pieces.
These chunks are emotionally resonant, sensory-rich, tied to specific contexts.
That's right. Think mixtapes, not syllable drills.
Or Lego bricks, not alphabet soup. I like those analogies.
Yeah, they help. And it's not just about the words themselves. It's how the brain fundamentally constructs meaning. It prioritizes the whole unit, the feeling, the context, over decoding word by word.
Okay, so contrasting that with what are called analytic processors, ALPs. They pick up single words first and build sentences piece by piece.
Generally, yes. Whereas GLPs store entire gestalts, like maybe, let's get out of here,
Yeah.
or are you kidding me, as one complete unit.
And these units aren't just spoken, they're felt. They carry the tone, the memory.
The whole relational context. Yeah, it's packed in there.
So who are GLPs? You said many are autistic, but not all.
Correct. Many are, but the pattern is also seen quite a bit in individuals with trauma histories, especially related to attachment disruption.
Our sources also mention queer and trans folks, particularly when navigating complex identity narratives. Also, people with learning differences like dyslexia or auditory processing issues.
And multiply marginalized individuals whose language might develop under, chronic stress or pressure. It's broader than often assumed.
Which raises a huge question. If it's this documented, this common across different groups, why haven't most of us heard of it?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The public conversation, especially in that self-help, neurodivergent space online, it's often not drawing from the actual research.
It's drawing from personal experience, often quite limited experience.
Often quite limited, yeah. And frequently, let's be honest, white, cis, middle-class experience that then gets marketed as if it's universal.
Our sources call that market logic.
Pretty much. The coaching industry often works by framing difference as a problem you need to solve and then selling you the solution.
And GLP, with all its nuance, its depth,
Yeah.
it doesn't fit into a neat little 3-module course.
Exactly. You can't really coach someone out of being a Gestalt processor. Supporting it takes real expertise, not just a downloadable workbook. So what gets sold is often this feeling of self-recognition, but without the actual accuracy.
Okay, so why does getting this right matter so much? It's not just about using the right label, is it?
Oh, it's way beyond terminology. This is about what happens when someone's fundamental way of using language is misunderstood, especially if they're already marginalized in other ways.
It leads to misdiagnosis, obviously,
Right.
and deep identity confusion.
Right. The research shows people might get told their scripting is OCD or their metaphors are just masking when they've never even heard the term GLP.
And the confusion spreads out, doesn't it? Like, neurotypical people who are GLPs might mistakenly think they must be autistic because their intense, layered way of speaking matches those influencer descriptions?
Exactly. And conversely, autistic people who happen to be analytic processors who think more word by word might feel like they don't count as autistic because the popular online narrative is so heavily skewed towards GLP traits being the autistic way to communicate.
Which they aren't, necessarily.
Not universally, no.
So the confusion just builds and builds until, as one source put it, people no longer know how to name themselves at all.
Yeah. The problem really blows up when someone's never heard the word Gestalt, but is coaching others through autistic language quirks. It's a recipe for confusion.
And this isn't just an online bubble problem, right? It walks right into schools.
Absolutely. GLP students are in classrooms everywhere. And many hit a wall. They plateau at what gets called functional literacy because most curricula are built for analytic thinkers.
They struggle with assembling the meaning, not just decoding the words.
Precisely. And the tragic part is they often get labeled disinterested, delayed, defiant even. Their actual brilliance, their unique voice just gets missed.
I'm thinking about the families, the parents.
Oh, it's heartbreaking. Often the parents might be undiagnosed GLPs themselves. They know their child isn't broken, but they struggle to advocate because nobody ever explained their own language system to them either.
One source paints this picture of parents crying in school meetings, just knowing deep down.
My child is not broken, but the system doesn't know how to teach them. Neither did it know how to teach me. It's devastating.
This also just flattens the public understanding of autism, doesn't it? Like there's only one autistic voice.
Totally. Those online narratives often create this image of autism primarily existing in, white, cisgender, verbal, middle-class women with a certain aesthetic. But GLP doesn't look the same everywhere. It shows up differently across race, class, gender, other disabilities. It could be culturally specific echolalia. It could be protest speech that gets misread as defiance. It could be queer metaphor that gets dismissed as melodrama.
And when those diverse expressions are erased, people are left feeling even more isolated. They miss out on finding potential kinship.
Which is why our sources stress the profound relief in being seen clearly.
Right. Not mislabeled. Not coached out of how you naturally express yourself.
But named fully as who you are. GLP isn't a pathology, it's not a phase, it's not a branding niche. It's just a fundamental way of being in language for some people.
Okay, but this issue, this misunderstanding, it runs deeper than just influencers and coaches, right?
Fortunately, yes. Our sources reveal this gap extends even to licensed credentialed professionals, social workers, counselors, psychologists.
Well, that's pretty sobering. If it's a documented communication style, why is the gap so widespread, even among trained professionals? What's going on there?
Well, a big part of it, according to the sources, is that GLP often just isn't part of the standard training for LCSWs, counselors, or psychologists.
Really? It's not in the curriculum?
Or if it is, it might be framed as, like, a developmental oddity to correct, not a valid way to communicate. In education, it barely gets mentioned outside of maybe early childhood speech therapy, and even then it's often seen as something to get past.
But why? Why the resistance or the lack of integration, if the research is there?
Sources point pretty strongly towards the long shadow of the ABA Applied Behavior Analysis industrial complex, which has historically and actively resisted models like natural language acquisition that validate GLP. ABA often prioritizes compliance and observable, often surface-level, speech over understanding deeper relational meaning-making.
And that resistance is powerful. Well-funded.
Very much so, yeah. It creates this massive inertia, making it hard for newer understandings like GLP to gain traction in mainstream training and practice.
So you're going to put these silos of knowledge.
Exactly. Maybe an SLP, a speech therapist, knows about GLP for early language, but they might not track how it affects literacy or comprehension later on.
And an educator sees the reading gaps, but has no idea the student's inner world operates on gestalts.
And a therapist hears metaphorical language or looping stories and immediately thinks trauma or dissociation because that's their training, without considering GLP as the underlying structure.
So each professional sees maybe one piece of the puzzle.
But nobody connects the dots for the whole person. You get, as one source says, a system full of well-meaning professionals, none of whom are trained to recognize or support GLP at the level it actually exists.
And the consequence for the individual?
It's dire. GLP individuals, especially autistic GLPs, just fall through the cracks. They go unsupported, misunderstood, their full potential untapped. When the professionals misread you, it doesn't just sting, it shapes your life.
So just to reiterate this deep dive, it's not about being anti-coach or anti-self-discovery online.
Not at all.
What our sources are really calling for, and what we want to echo, is being pro-accuracy, pro-community, and deeply pro-literacy.
Yes, because here's the hopeful part. When we start naming things accurately, people find each other. Communities form.
When we describe language as it really is, GLPs feel less alone, less broken.
And when we offer the right frameworks, not just the ones that went viral, people can start to see themselves clearly, maybe for the very first time.
So here's the invitation, really. For you listening, for coaches, educators, therapists, for GLPs themselves, go deeper. Ask why. Be willing to unlearn some things.
If your inner voice, as one source beautifully puts it, sounds more like film quotes than bullet points, maybe this is your welcome home.
And the next time someone tries to label your scripting as just a trauma thing or a compulsion,
Or says it's RSD or OCD or just overthinking or masking,
you can breathe. Maybe smile gently.
and you can say, well, it's actually GLP.
And knowing that, it's not just semantics. It changes things. It helps you, and it helps how we all hear and connect.
Because truly seeing each other in full, that changes everything. Your language system, your way of being, it's not too much. It's not too late. You might just be a Gestalt waiting to be understood.